Welcome. Thank you for coming out this morning. My name is Gina Baker. I'm the Outreach Manager for Housing Action Illinois. I'm one of the leaders of the Just Housing Coalition that unites more than 100 local organizations that have been working for years to break down housing barriers that people with arrest and conviction records face. We are here today because we are facing a critical moment in Cook County. We have the opportunity to pass the Just Housing Amendment to reduce unfair housing discrimination and ensure that more than 1 million residents who have a record will have a fair chance to find a stable place to live. We are delighted to have with us today Commissioner Brandon Johnson, the chief sponsor of the Just Housing Amendment. We also want to acknowledge our co-sponsors on the bill, Commissioners Larry Suffernan and Commissioner Jeffrey Tobolsky. We also want to thank Commissioners Kevin Morrison and Donna Miller for coming out this morning with their support. Finally, we'd like to thank Alderman Walter Burnett. Today, we will be sharing a wide range of perspectives from individuals that will share personal stories about housing barriers, housing providers, and representatives of our coalition and commissioners. First, we will have with us today Marie Claire Tran Liang, who is the senior attorney with the Shriver Center.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie Claire Tran Liang, and I'm a senior attorney at the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law. The Shriver Center works to advance justice and opportunity for everyone by advocating for economic and racial justice. The Shriver Center is proud to be part of the Just Housing Initiative, a coalition of more than 100 organizations united to work towards equal housing access for people with arrest and conviction records. Members include directly impacted individuals and their families, social service providers, community organizers, legal and policy experts, and housing and criminal justice advocates. We are here today because people with records, just like everyone else, deserve a place to call home. But so often, policies keep them out of the housing they need and deserve as human beings. Policies like automatic denials of applicants with criminal records and the absence of any opportunity for these applicants to show that they are more than their criminal background. The burden of these unjust policies fall not only on individuals, but also their families. Families who are key to providing support for justice-involved individuals as they reintegrate into their communities. To help people with records and their families have equal access to housing, the Just Housing Amendment would do three things. First, it would require landlords to determine whether a person has met financial and other qualifications before considering the person's criminal history. Second, the amendment would prohibit housing discrimination on the basis of arrest records, juvenile records, records that have been sealed and expunged, and blanket bans based on criminal records. Third, the amendment would allow housing providers to deny housing on the basis of conviction, but only after an individualized assessment of the person's conviction history, looking at factors such as the nature and severity of the offense, the time that has passed since it has happened, and most importantly, evidence of rehabilitation and what this person has done since coming home. In essence, the amendment would require housing providers to give fair consideration to people with records. This is not a new idea. In 2016, HUD issued fair housing guidance to housing providers on their use of criminal records and recognize that protected classes, especially Black and Latinx men and women and people with disabilities, are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system. Housing providers who enforce blanket bans against individuals with records run the risk of violating the Federal Fair Housing Act. And the guidance went on to explain that to comply with the Federal Fair Housing Act, housing providers had to do the very things that the Just Housing Amendment requires: delayed consideration, refraining from discrimination on the basis of arrest and blanket bans, and individualized assessments. This basic process ensures that landlords look beyond the four corners of the criminal background check and give individuals a fair consideration for housing. Today, 1 in 3 people in the United States have a criminal record. Having a criminal record today is more common than having a 4-year college degree. In Cook County, this translates to over 1 million people who would need the type of housing protections that the Just Housing Amendment offers. Jurisdictions across the country have passed similar amendments to protect the fair housing rights of justice individuals, and it is time for Cook County to join this movement today. Thank you.
Thank you. We just want to acknowledge also Commissioner Scott Breton for coming out this morning and joining us. Next, we will have Troy and Camilo, Quinn residents of Homewood.
What do we want? Fair housing. When do we want it? Now. Yes, thank you. My name's Troy O'Quinn. My wife, Camille, my daughters, Sophia and Abigail, are with me here today. Have you ever done anything and right after you immediately wished you had not done that? I've spent the last 28 years wishing that I could turn back time. Because 28 years ago, when I came back from Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm with a ferocious drug habit, I did the dumbest thing I've ever done. I broke into a store and I emptied their safe. It didn't get far. Ever since that time, I've wished I could turn back the hands of time. Ever since that time, I wish that I could go back and just change it so that wouldn't be on my record. I never realized what that would do to me and to the family that I would in the future have. In 2009, it became all too real to me when these little girls came into the world. It only takes a second to break the law, but a lifetime to live with the consequences. 1 second, 1 crime, 1 serious lack of judgment. In America, that can be a life sentence. Unfortunately, this life sentence doesn't only affect just me. Now it affects the future opportunities that these young ladies will have. In America, an arrest record is not just a life sentence, but it can become a generational curse. My girls have limited housing options because I committed a crime long before I ever even knew their mother. Here in Illinois, I met a wonderful wife, and we've been married for 17 years. Here in Illinois, I pastored a church that was expected to close its doors, and it's now a thriving place with a heartbeat of outreach to serve others. Here in Illinois, I witnessed the birth of these amazing little twins. Here in Illinois, I've been able to lead the General Assistance Department for the largest township and have transformed it into a thriving place of assistance for our community. Here in Illinois, I've been able to do many wonderful things. Yet, here in Illinois, in Cook County, I can still be denied housing simply by some ink on a paper. Yes, something needs to change.
Yes. Yes.
And it needs to change now.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
We are going to have some of our commissioners speak so that they can get over to the meeting that they have this morning. First, we're going to call up Commissioner Kevin Morrison of the 15th District.
Yeah! Wow, there's some energy in this room, and it's great to see. I'm proud to join my fellow commissioners to support the Just Housing Amendment, and I want to thank Commissioner Johnson for his leadership on this issue, as well as all the activists here today. Safe and affordable housing is a human right. Preventing someone with an arrest record from finding adequate housing without even taking their past conviction or evidence of rehabilitation into context is wrong and discriminatory. Under the current cloud of discrimination that many with prior convictions face in finding adequate housing, their chance of recidivism and homelessness is sharply increased. This amendment will encourage landlords and real estate agents to not make blanket discriminatory judgments about those with prior convictions, but consider each application on the case-by-case basis. Give the application sufficient notice and an opportunity to dispute the accuracy and relevance if they are denied based on their former convictions. The Just Housing Amendment is a clear signal that Cook County is a community that won't stand for discrimination, a place that supports and encourages those seeking rehabilitation as they re-enter society, and a place that believes in fair housing for all. I am proud to support this, and I really hope to see its passage today, and I thank everyone for their support and activism on this important issue.
Commissioner Donna Miller, 6th District.
That's right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone being here. I represent the 6th District, and in the 6th District, there are over 800 people who return to the 6th District from Illinois prisons. These people deserve a fair housing. That's why we're so happy to stand here with you today. Lowering the number of homeless people in Cook County is something that the JHI attacks head on, and we thank you so much for that. Southland families like the O'Quinns deserve a fair chance to rebuild. And I have known Troy O'Quinn for many years now, and so proud of his work and his family. These babies have grown up right before my eyes. So if we want to spend less on incarceration and reduce recidivism, we must fight for just housing practices. So I am so proud to stand here and recognize my colleague, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, for being a leader on this issue. I always say leadership is a choice. I'm so glad you made this choice.
And now I would like to introduce my commissioner, the chief sponsor, Commissioner Brandon Johnson of the 1st District.
Well, good morning. Wow, it feels like Sunday morning, Troy. You got it started here.
All right now.
All right. So that's it. That's it. Look, justice has been denied for far too long for the people of Chicago and Cook County, quite frankly, the state of Illinois and around the country. I am, first of all, very honored and humbled to be joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Scott Britton, who has a new enunciation to his last name this morning, Donna Miller, Kevin Morrison, and all the sponsors who are joining in this effort to bring justice to families across Cook County. I'm also honored and really humbled to be joined by my colleague on the west side of Chicago, who represents a good portion of the 1st District, and he does it at the City Hall level. He's the Alderman of the 27th Ward. Alderman Walter Burnett is here. And his story and his life legacy is testament of what is possible when we actually render justice. I'm also very honored that the families who support this initiative has reached well beyond the Board of Commissioners. And you're seeing today with City Hall and our aldermen here today. But we also have the support of the Public Defender of Cook County. And I want to thank the Public Defender of Cook County for her support of this important initiative. I also want to thank the President of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, Tony Preckwinkle, who has pledged her support for this ordinance. But I also want to recognize the scores, hundreds of organizations who are part of this coalition that is seeking justice for families. What strikes me about this moment is that this is why we were sent to the County Board of Commissioners, is to raise the voices of people who have been set at the margins for far too long, and that the ghosts of Jim Crow continue to haunt families who are seeking justice through a failed criminal system that continues to demonize people for a mistake that they've made. And so those voices are being heard loud and clear today, because in the 1st District, there are 3,300 families that return to my district every single day from our prison system. Almost half of them are women. And of those women, 80% of them are parents. And so when we're talking about creating opportunities for families, from eradicating these vestiges of Jim Crow that continue to marginalize families generation after generation, that's who we're fighting for today, sisters and brothers. We're fighting for the men and women who contribute to our society every single day and can no longer afford to be penalized because of a decision that they made when they were 17 or 18 or 19 years old. The last thing that I will say here is that there are those who are more interested in protecting the ruling class while marginalizing those who have been set with barriers for far too long. The same ruling class that receives billions and billions of dollars in investment while our neighborhoods continue to starve of resources. This is about stabilizing a community. The best way to stabilize a community is to stabilize families. I am honored and proud to be the sponsor of this ordinance, and I'm looking forward to it becoming law. Thank you. God bless you.
We would like to also acknowledge right now that we have Commissioner Alma Anaya, who is here also in support. Next, we will hear from Ann Holcomb, who is a local landlord on the South Side.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, very good. My name is Ann Holcomb, and I am a landlord. I own a building in the South Shore community, and I fully support the Just Housing Initiative. In fact, I've been acting in the spirit of this initiative even before the initiative itself existed. I have done this because I believe that being fair and just is simply good business. 8 years ago, I purchased a small apartment building in the South Shore community. Prior to that, I had a house in Indiana where I also rented. Over the years, returning citizens have leased from me, including one of my very first tenants in my South Shore building, who still resides in my building after 8 years. As any landlord will tell you, I've had a few problematic tenants over the years, but none of the returning citizens have been a problem in my building. If anything, I have found them to be more appreciative and more respectful than the other tenants because I have given them a chance. When I have an open unit and a prospective tenant applies for an apartment, I always follow the same protocol. I verify their employment or other source of income. I check their credit and won't rent to someone with a FICO score less than 550. In other words, I accept bad credit but not disastrous credit. I check to see if they have had any evictions in the last 5 years, and I call references. Now, even if they've had an eviction, there may be some extenuating circumstances. So I do look at that, but then I want to find out more. If there are no red flags at this point, I will then conduct a criminal background check. Since my building is a family building with lots of children, I am careful. And I want to say that this ordinance will not compel a landlord to bring someone who's been convicted of child molestation into their building. It will not compel anyone to do that. All right? So I have rejected one tenant that had a history of child molestation. Beyond that limited number of people, which was one person, I have considered each applicant's background on a case-by-case basis. And I have particularly This indicates to me that if they tell me, like when I interview them before I run the background check, that they had an issue, then I respect that even more, because that tells me that they own their past and they have moved forward. And I get a chance to ask them both before and after the criminal background check about what has gone on in their life since that time. I have housed people who have been convicted of cocaine possession. I've housed people who were convicted of felony retail theft. I've housed people I housed one person who had actually been convicted of attempted manslaughter. And I housed one person who was convicted of drug trafficking. All but one of those people served significant penitentiary time. And all of them were wonderful tenants in my building. Okay. So passing the Just Housing Initiative is the right thing to do. The returning citizens whom I've housed have all told me horror stories about how their backgrounds have continued to follow them in their lives due to stigma. And like the gentleman who spoke earlier, one even told me that he felt his conviction was sort of a life sentence because he'd been shut out of so many jobs and housing opportunities. Returning citizens have served their sentences and deserve a place to live. Please pass the Just Housing Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, we will have Charles Perry, who is the Director of Community Organizing at the Westside Health Authority.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Charles Perry. I work for Westside Health Authority. 11 years ago, I was released from prison after 19 years and 29 days. And what I needed most when I came home was a stable place to stay, and my mother provided that for me. One thing I know from the work that I do, I started out as the outreach coordinator for Westside Health Authority, so I was working with people coming home from prison. And the one problem everybody had was housing. And that was the reason recidivism was so high in Austin, is because people didn't have a safe place to stay. I like to tell folks, had I not had a safe place to stay, I can't say that I would be standing here today. But having a safe place to stay after you're being denied employment and after you're being turned away from services that you need, you have a place to come home and just relax. And that energizes you to start the next day and go back out there and hear no again, but always looking for the yes. I know for a fact that it was the first 4 years that stabilized me. After that, I got my own condominium after I got married. 3 years later, we had to get a home because we had 3 children. So along the journey, housing has stabilized me and my family more and more. And what we're finding out today is that too many people come home from prison wanting to do the right thing with the right attitude, but because they're unable to get safe and secure housing, they end up back in trouble again. So it's very important that we look at each individual as individuals and not just group people together and say, because you have been convicted of a crime, you should not and you cannot be able to live somewhere. So one of the things I did is I just purchased a building in Austin that I'm rehabbing, that I want to make it affordable. We talk about all the things that other folks is not doing, so I want to make sure that I'm doing what I know that people need. And so I'm rehabbing a building so we can allow any and everybody access to good quality housing. I want to thank you today. My name is Charles Perry.
On behalf of the Just Housing Coalition, I want to thank you for coming out this morning and joining us. And we are urging all of our commissioners today to pass the Just Housing Amendment so that we can reunite families. We need mothers with their children. We need fathers with their children. And we need people to have a safe place to call home. Thank you. Now. Fair housing now. housing now.
Fair housing now. What do we want? Fair housing.
Now. Fair housing. Now. 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 Now.